Hello, and welcome to another episode of Financial Aid Fridays. Thank you so much for joining us on this fine Friday afternoon. I am Jessica Hickernell.
And my name is Simon Ferlin. Thank you again for joining us. And before we begin, Jess and I would like to let you know what to expect with this series of episodes.
Yeah, so for our new viewers, Financial Aid Fridays is a series of webinars online that you can watch live with us through YouTube and through Facebook, where Simon and I are going to be talking about different topics in financial aid that are especially useful for incoming students. So again, we're going to be hosting these every Friday through June and July, and the dates and the times are actually posted right on our website, which you can actually look down below on the little information bar, our umaine.edu/stuaid website.
And we do want this experience to be an interactive one for you. So as we discuss some of the topics for today, if you come up with any questions that you want to ask us, feel free to post your questions directly through the Facebook comment section for this live stream. Or if you're watching on YouTube, you can post your comments directly on that platform. If neither of those works for you, or you don't have a YouTube account, which I believe you need for those comments, you can also send us an email to our email address listed below. We do have staff on hand monitoring all three locations, and they will be feeding us some of your questions. So we'll go through today's sort of block of content, and then we'd like to hit some of those questions and answer your comments and whatever you are inquiring about.
Yeah, and so for those of you who joined us last week, welcome back. Buckle up for another exciting episode of some financial aid information. For those of you that this is your first episode that you're watching, just an FYI, we are recording all of our episodes, and you can watch those recordings right on our website, that umaine.edu/stuaid website, where the recordings are available. In the meantime, just so an FYI, what we covered last week was just a basic overview of the different offices that are involved in all those financial matters for students. That includes the financial aid office, the student employment office, as well as the bursar's office, which is our billing office.
And Jess, what do we have in store for people watching today?
Yeah, like I said, Simon, they better buckle up. This is a very exciting episode. We are going to be covering, really going through the actual award package, going through an award letter, how to read through what you've been offered for financial aid, and then we're going to go through estimating expenses. So looking at the different charges you'll see on your student bill, and how to calculate, what's going to be left over after your financial aid is applied to those charges.
That's certainly a hot topic. I know that we've had several people reach out to us through email or through some of the Zoom advising sessions that we do offer, which you can also sign up for on our website as well, to schedule a Zoom advising session one-on-one with a financial aid advisor. And oftentimes we're getting questions about exactly that topic. So we thought it was important to sort of go through how to estimate your expenses here today. Now, before we dive into that topic, I did want to address one of the questions that we didn't have enough time to actually dig into last week. So to the person who posted that, thank you, and hopefully you're listening now. So the question was, at what point do families, are they required to pay the EFC, that expected family contribution? And that's actually a common misconception, and we get that question a lot. That EFC is not actually a required payment for students and families. What that is, and for those of you that may or may not be familiar with that terminology, it's from the FAFSA. After you complete and submit your FAFSA to apply for federal financial aid, things like federal grants and federal loans, the result after you've completed that is getting a particular number that's titled EFC, or expected family contribution. That's, you don't want to think about that in terms of dollars. We recommend thinking about that simply as a number on a scale. So the EFC scale ranges from 0 all the way up to 999,999. And what that does is it takes all of these there are all these calculations happening behind the scenes in terms of your assets and your particular financial situation, puts you on a scale, and it allows the federal government to determine your eligibility for certain financial aid funds, like the federal Pell Grant, for example. So in that example, the EFC range for federal Pell Grant would be 0 to 5711 for this upcoming 2021 academic year. So it's not actually what you need to pay for your particular student. It is simply placing you on a scale to determine eligibility for certain financial aid.
Yeah, and Simon, one of the ways that I also like to explain it, because again, this EFC number, this expected family contribution number, it's definitely a difficult concept to understand how it is involved in the entire financial aid process. I like to also call it a benchmark number that helps to determine eligibility for different federal, state, and institutional grant and loan programs. So again, also just to sort of reiterate what Simon said, is really you shouldn't be thinking of it as a specific dollar amount that you are obligated to pay, but more of a benchmark number based on your FAFSA information that we use to figure out what you're eligible for financial aid. All right, so I think we are ready to dive right into today's topic of reading our financial aid award and estimating expenses. So Simon and I have in front of us are the University of Maine financial aid award packages. So once you have completed your FAFSA and submitted any required documentation that we need in order to figure out what your financial aid eligibility is, you will receive one of these wonderful folders with lots of information in them in the mail. So if we open this up, and Simon, we'll sort of go through this together just to sort of give you an overview of the different information that you'll see in these folders. So first, and right up front, you're going to get a financial aid award letter. That if it's got blue boxes on it, that means this is your official financial aid award. And we are actually going to take a much closer look at these so you can really understand the different information that is showing on these. Then behind that financial aid award, we've got some handouts here to help you just sort of navigate the financial aid process from this point forward. The first one, it's got a nice little purple bar across it. It's really just to help you decode your financial aid award letter, the different types of financial aid that's available. Then we have an estimating expenses worksheet. For those of you that are watching and have received this package, this is really what we're going to be going through today. So you can absolutely follow along once we get to that part of the episode. And then finally, we also have some important information about accessing your Main Street Student Center and doing some of the important reporting to our office that could potentially affect your financial aid.
That's right. There's a lot of information contained in this package. So if you've received one, certainly take the time, go through each of the sort of handouts and slides included in this because there's general information. There's information on the different types of aid, information on loans, and information on some of the next steps that you may want to be thinking about. So definitely, take some time, go through each of the items. And if you have it and you've already looked through it and you have any questions, as I said, feel free to post those. We'd love to dig into each of these items.
And then the last item that we have in here is we have an actual financial aid guide. And so each of these sections really provides some more in-depth information about the financial aid you were offered, eligibility requirements, how to maintain your financial aid each year, and some additional loan information as well. So there's a lot of really useful information in this booklet, which again, like Simon said, you should really try to take a really close look at it and read through all those materials. So I think we are ready to look at an example letter, award letter, that an in-state, a Maine resident student would receive. So we're going to go ahead and get that right up on our screen here. Simon, you want to go ahead and start us off on this?
Absolutely. And for those of you who are watching who are not in-state residents, we will be showing you an out-of-state version of this letter in just a moment. So we're going to go through the in-state version, and then we'll showcase the out-of-state version and go through that one as well. So at the very top, of course, we have your student information. Just below that is where you start getting into your actual financial aid award. So that sort of middle section labeled gift aid. Now that would be what we've parenthetically indicated is free money. So that in that section are types of aid that you do not have to pay back. So you're going to be seeing potentially scholarships, your merit scholarship, something you would have received through the Office of Admissions when you initially applied to UMaine. You'll also see any federal or state grants that you might be eligible for, again, based off of that EFC number that we've discussed. So in this particular example, we have the UMaine Black Bear Scholarship. We have it split to show you how much you can expect per semester as well as the overall total amount. So that particular item is a $1,000 award, which is split evenly between the fall and spring semesters. And we do bill by semester. So when the bills are generated, which they will be in about a month or so, it will be for the fall semester specifically. Just below that, we have another item from the Office of Admissions, in this case the UMaine Early Action Award, and then the federal Pell Grant and State of Maine grants. So in the bold sections there, that's going to just be totaling up each of the items that I just mentioned. Just below that, I'll continue down on the left-hand side here before we get to the items on the right-hand side of this particular letter. So just below that, this particular student in this example is eligible for federal work study. Again, that goes back to that EFC, that expected family contribution. So it is something that is need-based and based on that particular number. We will be discussing that, and actually we discussed sort of how federal work study works in our previous episode. If you didn't get a chance to see that, it is posted on our website, the full episode. But just a brief overview, that's money that is allocated for this particular student, for students who are eligible, and it does not go to their bill. It is something that if a student chooses to use it, if they apply for and get a federal work study position, student employment position on campus, then their biweekly paycheck will be coming out of that allocation. But it is listed for those of you who are eligible for that. It will be located on this particular letter. And then the last item in terms of the financial aid package that's listed on this letter would be federal loans that you may be eligible for. So generally, incoming students will get, freshmen will get $5,500 as a maximum amount of federal direct student loans. And in some cases, that may be only unsubsidized federal direct loans. Other cases, it's a mixture of subsidized and unsubsidized. That is also based on the EFC from the FAFSA, and the difference being the subsidized is not accruing interest actively while students are enrolled at least half-time here on campus. The unsubsidized is actively accruing interest while the student continues to take coursework.
Yeah, so Simon really went over the actual aid that a student has been offered in the financial aid letter. If we continue down on that page, there's a lot of other information that's really important to sort of help you get the full picture of what your aid offer means. So the first thing that we've done on this award letter is you'll see direct costs. So this is our estimated tuition and fee amounts, as well as the estimated room and board amounts for an academic year. So remember, there's 2 semesters in an academic year. We've got our fall semester and spring semester. So this would be the 2-semester amount. One other thing to just keep in mind, these are estimated amounts for now until they're actually approved by our University of Maine Board of Trustees, which usually will happen, I believe will happen sometime in July. But these should help you get a good ballpark number as to what to anticipate on the actual bill that you'll be charged. In addition, we've also included indirect costs. So just a quick definition, because you'll hear this term indirect costs and direct costs quite frequently, especially whenever talking about financial aid in the bill. So when we say direct costs, that refers specifically to the charges that you're going to see on your student bill. So when you enroll in a class, you're going to see the actual tuition and fee charges for that class on your student bill. If you are living on campus, you are going to see the charges for your dorm room as well as for your meal plan directly on your student account. Now, when we say indirect costs, these are costs that we recognize and we anticipate that most students are going to have. However, they're costs that will not appear on your actual student bill. So that's why we refer to them as indirect costs. So these include books and supplies, as well as travel and miscellaneous and loan fees. So these would be upfront loan fees that we call origination fees. Again, these expenses will not show directly on the bill, but we anticipate and we expect most students will have some sort of expenses related to these categories. So then if we move on to our blue boxes across on the right-hand side, the first one is award assumptions. So when we receive the FAFSA information and any additional documentation that may be required, we're looking at all that information in order to figure out what the actual financial aid eligibility is. And so we wanted to make it very clear on these award letters the information that we're basing the award eligibility on. So as Simon explained, that expected family contribution, that EFC number, is a big player in determining the different types and amounts of financial aid eligibility. So you can see on this particular example, the EFC, that expected family contribution number that came from the FAFSA, is that 1649 number. In addition, grade level, so the number of credits that a student has completed, will affect aid eligibility. Specifically, this will affect the total federal loan eligibility. So for example, if you are an incoming transfer student and you are bringing in multiple credits, transfer credits with you, you may be at a sophomore or a junior level in terms of the number of total credits that you have completed, in which case your total eligibility for direct loans will be more. And we'll go in a little bit further in terms of the different amounts and grade level maximums for direct loans. And then also residency is a big determining factor in the amounts and types of aid that a student will get. So whether you are an in-state student or an out-of-state student. In addition, we have New England Regional Board of Higher Education, also called NEBI, rates, and we have online-only programs that also have different tuition rates, which affect the types and amounts of aid a student can get. Students' dependency status. So this dependency status is something that comes, again, directly from the FAFSA. It's determined by the FAFSA. And so whether a student is a dependent student or independent student for financial aid purposes will also affect the total amount of direct loans that they could be eligible for.
And just to jump in there
yeah,
too, because there's we actually get frequently a question asked about dependency status. Some students will contact our office and ask, if I'm living on my own and I'm paying for all of my own expenses, my own rent, my own food, whatever the case may be, and they're not anticipating any financial assistance from family members, can I be considered an independent student? So this is actually different from financial independence. This is a dependency status as based on financial aid federal regulations. So there are only certain items that will change that. Otherwise, it's age-based or marital status, or if you have dependents of your own, you have children of your own, things like that can affect that particular status designation. So it's more to it than just whether or not you're financially independent. There are additional components to that you may want to be aware of.
Yeah, and I think just another note on that piece of it, it's important to know that it is different than IRS tax filing dependency status.
That's right.
Which it very commonly gets confused with. So again, that FAFSA dependency status is unique to the FAFSA and very much based on those questions that you're answering at the beginning of the FAFSA. So we definitely look at that information. And then the last two items that we look at that help us to figure out types and amounts of financial aid eligibility is first your housing plans. So whether you're planning on living on or off campus, or whether you're planning on living at home with parents. That can affect, again, the total amount of financial aid and the types of aid that you're eligible for. And then lastly, your enrollment. So at this point, when we are posting financial aid eligibility for students and sending you these letters, this financial aid offer is based on 15 credits per semester. Now we do that because a minimum of 12 credits is considered full-time for an undergraduate student. And 2, because that's usually the average amount of credits that a student is taking here. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be required to take 15 credits per semester. But what it does mean is that if you are taking less than 15 credits, that your financial aid could be affected by that and may need to be adjusted in conjunction with the number of credits that you're taking.
That's right, that's right. And in that final section, you have the estimated UMaine bill as a result of all the things that we've just discussed. So the estimated direct costs to attend, again, those direct costs are just those that are billed to the account, and then subtracting out the gift aid. Now we wanted to separate things out, so we first subtract out the gift aid, because again, that's free money, you don't have to pay it back. And then we have the federal loans deducted. Just to give you an idea, if you are planning on accepting those, then that, the number after subtracting that, that's sort of your remaining costs. If you're not planning on accepting those or utilizing those, then you'll want to go with simply subtracting that gift aid and using that estimated remaining cost. And in terms of sort of filling, how do you go about paying for that? Again, we went through several options in last week's episode, so we would certainly encourage you to dig into that. There were several options, including alternative loans, Parent Plus loans, and we discussed external scholarships as well.
And Simon, actually, just to sort of jump in there, we are actually going to have an entire episode devoted to additional financing options.
There we go.
So it won't be next week, so it'll actually be the week after next. So that last week of June, we will have an entire episode devoted to talking about additional financing options to help figure out the plan for those estimated remaining costs.
Mm-hmm. So definitely stay tuned in and join us for that one as well.
All right, so I think we are ready to move on to an out-of-state student letter example. So we'll go ahead and get that switched up there. We're going to go through this pretty quickly because, again, the layout is very similar. So, again, starting at that top, we laid out the gift aid eligibility. Again, this is the free money. The money that you do not have to pay back. There's no obligation to pay back. This is grants and scholarships. One thing to note with this, so this is based on, this includes any awards that you may have been offered from the admissions office at the time of admission, as well as any grants and scholarships, grants and scholarship eligibility from the FAFSA. So you can see that right at the top. We've also pulled out that work study amount for you, that earned paycheck amount. And then just to note on that piece, that does not get included in the total aid that is going towards the bill. Okay, so as Simon had explained, that is an amount that a student is actually able to earn in work study funds. And then you can see in that final section, we've pulled out those federal loans. Again, a loan is a type of financial aid that must be repaid. And so, depending on that EFC number from the FAFSA would determine the amount of subsidized versus unsubsidized loans that you would have received.
And it looks like we're getting a question here posted into us for students who have not yet received the financial aid package that we're displaying here. So if that describes your situation, there could be a number of causes for that. One, you want to make sure, of course, that you've submitted your FAFSA, that federal application, and that you would do through FAFSA.gov. If you've already done that, you do want to make sure that we've received it and that you included our school, because it actually asks you at the end of the FAFSA, or it could be at the beginning, which school you actually want this submitted to. So you want to make sure that it has, University of Maine or University of Maine of Machias listed on your FAFSA. Otherwise, we won't receive it. So that is something to look for as well. If we have received it and we've processed it, and you do want to make sure that you check the status on your Main Street account. So that's certainly a resource that you want to make sure you can log into. If you haven't already activated your Main Street account, we would encourage you to do so. There's a lot of information you can find through your particular Main Street account. And some of those items are, there's a section that's a to-do list. So some students have been selected, their FAFSA was selected for a process called verification. It's a random selection after submitting the FAFSA, and generally what that means is that there are additional documents that we're going to need to receive in order to provide to the federal government. They're the ones sort of selecting and in charge of the verification process. And so we're going to be requesting additional documents, things like a signed tax return or tax transcript, which can also be done through the FAFSA with IRS data retrieval. All that information is going to be found in your to-do list. Sometimes there are forms that we need students to fill out, a dependent verification form. And again, you can get the information about each of these items if they apply to you by logging into your Main Street account and checking your to-do list. So if any of those are outstanding, that could be why you have not yet received your financial aid package.
Yeah, and I would say, if you're being really good about checking your Main Street regularly, which I'm just going to put a plug in there for that, I recommend minimum once a week going in there to just check to make sure the to-do list looks good, financial aid award looks good. So if you do not have anything on your to-do list and you have submitted your FAFSA, and you can actually see your financial aid eligibility on your Main Street View financial aid status, that does mean that you have been awarded an official financial aid award package. So it could just be a matter of timing. So if you were just recently offered that financial aid, your financial aid award package that we have shown here in the folder, that could very well be on its way in the mail. If it's been a while that you've seen that award information on your Main Street account, I would definitely recommend sending us an email at our umfinaid@maine.edu. We can certainly get a reprint of that for you and get that in the mail, because it definitely is a good idea to have a copy of your folder, this information in the folder as well as your letter. I know some frequent uses include if you are applying for outside scholarships or if you've been awarded outside scholarships, they sometimes request a copy of your award letter. So certainly, again, it could be just a matter of timing, but if you've seen your award out on your Main Street account for a while, just shoot us an email and we can go ahead and get you another copy of that. All right. So again, on this out-of-state financial aid award letter that you're seeing on the screen here, again, we list the direct costs, which again, the direct costs for an out-of-state versus an in-state student are going to look a little bit different in terms of the tuition and fee amounts. And then we've got our award assumptions and our estimated UMaine bill, just like with that in-state example that we showed. So you got your financial aid award letter. You have now read through it. You've figured out what, gift aid, what scholarships and grants you've been offered, what work study you've been offered, if you've been offered loans. Now, the big next step is to estimate your expenses. So again, we've basically done the estimating expenses for you on this award letter, but I know it really helps to sort of understand the process a little bit better by doing the actual math out. Now, I'm going to preface this with, you do not have to be a math expert. I'm not a fan of math, but I love financial aid, so I don't think that this process is too overwhelming, and we're just going to walk you right through this. So again, if you have this folder and you have the handout with the green estimating expenses across the top, you can follow right along. So we're going to go ahead and pull up an example of estimating educational expenses. So again, this is going to be based off of that in-state award example that we showed you first and we went through. Simon, you want to go ahead and start us off on this?
Absolutely. So as you can see, we've started filling out some of the sections here. So looking on the right, those direct costs. Now those are coming directly from the charts on the left-hand side, and they're also going to be matching what was in the sections here on the actual financial aid letter I'm sorry, at the bottom, the direct costs there. So that tuition and fees, so we're looking at an in-state resident currently, and again, based on 15 credits per semester, and we are looking at the annual amount. So that 11,738 is the estimated tuition and fee amount for 15 credits per semester for an in-state student. You can then get the on-campus room and board. Now again, you're the one filling this out, so you can write down what applies to you. So for students who are actually living with parents, whose families live nearby, and you're going to be doing that option, then you'll just put a 0 there. Otherwise, if you're living on campus, you'll have those room and board expenses. And additionally, if you know that you've opted for a different, meal plan or a different housing option, that has a different cost associated with it, which those of you, if any of you have done that, you'll already know what I'm talking about. Then you can plug in the different number there. But for the vast majority of folks, the default on-campus room and board is going to be that 11,286. That third item is the student health insurance plan. And it's important for folks to understand that is sort of on by default. And then you want, for those of you who are covered under maybe your parents' insurance or already have some form of health insurance that you're going to be covered under, then there will be an opt-out process. Now currently that is still set up for the current academic year. So you can't opt out just yet, but you will certainly have the ability to do so before school starts, and it will be removed from your bill, if it's charged to your account. So that is something to be aware of. That particular health insurance plan is the 2248. But again, if you have your own insurance and you already know that you do, you'll be able to opt out, so you'll just want to put a 0 there if that's the case. So that'll get you those direct costs, and then you'll be able to move on to the estimating financial aid section. And the other good thing about this, because of course, if you're using the numbers off of the letter that you've received to fill in for the financial aid section here towards the bottom, we may or may not have, if you have external scholarships that you've already, you've received a letter stating that you were awarded a scholarship from a local organization or from your high school, then you'll be able to include those numbers in this particular section. So in addition to your free money, the gift aid that was listed on your letter or on your Main Street account, and in addition to the federal direct loans, if you are going to be including that, depending on whether or not you're accepting that, you can sort of further make this a little more specific to your situation if you have those external scholarships. And then just taking those direct costs and subtracting out your gift aid. And we do have a section on indirect costs, so if you want to sort of pre-plan and be proactive about the realistic costs for your semester, for your year, you can certainly include that if you're looking at the miscellaneous costs, travel costs, and textbook costs as well.
Yeah, so just 2 comments here on this estimated remaining cost, so that $8,829 for this particular example. Again, remember that is the estimated remaining cost for the academic year. So in order to get a ballpark idea as to what would be the remaining costs for just one semester, because we do bill per semester, you would just divide that number by 2. So this is me doing my quick math. 4414 would be the semester cost. So I just wanted to make a quick note about that estimated remaining cost piece. And then a quick note on the estimated indirect costs. So if we could just scroll down just a little here. So we've got the books and supplies, travel and miscellaneous, and off-campus room and board. You see for the books and supplies and the travel and miscellaneous, we do have some specific amounts here. I just want to put a disclaimer on that. That is not an amount that a student is guaranteed to spend in books and supplies, for example. That is an estimated amount that we have estimated that we see commonly as an average amount that a student will pay for those different items. So I just want to make sure folks understand that that $1,000 for books and supplies for the academic year could very well be less, or it could be more. Again, it's very much dependent on the number of courses the student is taking and the types of courses and the requirements for those courses. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and move on to our out-of-state estimating expenses example that we have here. Again, we'll go through this kind of quickly because it's very much the same as calculating like we just did for the in-state example. Again, the big difference is going to be that tuition and fee amount. So it's going to be important when you're going down through this that you're choosing your correct residency status to get that correct tuition and fee amount. So again, just like that in-state example, you're going to add up all of your direct costs, so those tuition and fees and room and board charges based on those grids on the left-hand side. And then you'll input your estimated financial aid. Again, you can grab that right from your financial aid award offer, grabbing the gift aid amount and then your loan amount to add that right in there. And subtract that rate from your direct costs, and you've got your remaining, your estimated remaining costs. Again, that's for the academic year, so to get your semester estimated remaining costs, you would just divide by 2. And that is going to be a way harder number to math off the hand. 10,000 something, I would say, guys. So that is estimating your expenses. And that, I was looking at the clock here, I think that only took us maybe 6 minutes to go through those 2 examples. So I hope this didn't look too painful. Again, there wasn't a lot of math involved, and luckily most phones have a calculator on them to help with that, which if I had mine within reach, I would have used that to calculate that semester expense. So, okay. So that was our big discussion topic for today. Simon, I think we're ready to jump into some questions from our viewers.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, so our first question that we have, when are bills due?
Excellent. Okay, so that is certainly another frequent question that we're getting these days anyway. So the bills are generated by the bursar's office here on campus, and generally we do that right around the early July and try to send them out to families so that they receive them by around July 15th. As of right now, normally under normal circumstances we'd be looking at a mid-August due date. However, that has been extended. So the due date for the fall semester is September the 15th. So mark that on your calendars, but you can certainly, hopefully that gives you some additional time to sort of figure out the logistics of what, if any, additional resources might be necessary, applying for additional loans or what have you, or setting up a payment plan through the bursar's office. There are a lot of options, yeah, so September the 15th would be the date that you'd be looking for.
Yeah, and just a little bit more clarification on that bill due date. So what that means is by September 15th, you either have to have made your out-of-pocket payments, if you're planning on making any out-of-pocket payments. You need to have enrolled in an installment payment plan, if that is an option that you're looking at, or if you're looking at additional loans, you'll need to have applied for those loans by that date in order to avoid any sort of late fees after that due date.
Excellent, excellent. We have another question here. How do payment plans work?
That's a great question. And so our university does offer payment plans. Our bursar's office, again, that is our billing office. They offer 2 types of installment payment plans. They are semester-based, so they're 4 or 5 month long installment payment plans. The first type is called a calculated installment payment plan, and that is based off of directly the remaining charge on a student's account, and it'll automatically adjust based on, let's say a student drops a course or adds a course and the bill amount changes. The installment payment plan will automatically adjust and change your monthly payment. And then there is another type of installment payment plan, which is not that automatically adjusting installment payment plan. So both of those payment plans, they're interest-free. They do have a small enrollment fee in order to do that. And what I would recommend is make sure you're watching out for that first paper bill that's going to be coming from the bursar's office in mid-July that Simon mentioned, because there will definitely be some more information regarding those payment plans. So let's take a look here. How do I opt out of student health insurance?
Okay, so Jess, I actually lost your feed here, but I'm going to try and reconnect with you. But for the 529 plans, so those are plans that some folks have established in order to help fund their students, educational experience, and those are actually you can manage them through the administrator or whoever you're doing your 529 with, and they send the checks automatically to the bursar's office. So you simply need to let them know, what school the student is enrolled in, and that can be facilitated at the time that the bills are due. Excellent question. Okay, let's see if we have another one here. Okay, opting out of the student health insurance plan. That's actually something that that you'll be able. You can't yet do. I'll jump on this one, Jess, because I was talking about it earlier. If you don't mind.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That is something that if you actually, so the acronym that we use is SHIP for that, for the student health insurance plan. You can certainly Google UMaine SHIP, for example. You'll find the page. As I recall, it was umaine.edu/bursar, BURSAR/insurance. Now, as I mentioned, the page currently is set up to opt out still for the current academic year. So you cannot yet opt out for this coming academic year, but once that page is updated, it will indicate what year it's for on the actual page. It provides a link to the cross-insurance opt-out page. And when a student clicks on that or a family member clicks on that, you'll be requested to enter in your some of the information related to your insurance plan, and just confirming that you have and have insurance, or the student has insurance, and you're therefore opting out. So you can look for that closer to the start of the fall semester. I would suggest maybe in August, taking a look at that page. And again, if you don't remember the website that I just rattled off there, by then, reach out to the bursar's office or our office, and we'll certainly direct you in the right place. But that is not yet ready, but will be come August.
And what I will just jump in on there for that student health insurance plan is it's going to be important that you're monitoring your bill for that piece of it. So if you are planning on opting out, just be aware that you may see that I believe it was the $22.48 is the cost for this upcoming year. You may see that charge on your bill. Don't be alarmed if you are planning to do that opt-out process. Once you've completed that online process that Simon just mentioned, that charge will come off your bill automatically. So that's why it's going to be really important to just be monitoring your bill. And I think with that piece of it, I also just want to do one more mention for the bill piece. Students and families will be receiving, like Simon said, in mid-July, a paper bill from the bursar's office. An important note with that is you are only going to be receiving one paper bill per semester. So again, a lot of changes to coursework may happen, changes to your meal plans or dorm rooms. If you're opting out of the insurance, that'll affect, change the bill. So you're going to want to make sure that you're monitoring your billing account activity through the Main Street account. Again, this is another reason to try to go into your Main Street at least once a week to look for any changes. But Main Street's going to be the most up-to-date place to look for any sort of billing changes. Okay, so it looks like, Simon, we've got a question from Facebook here. Is student health insurance required?
Excellent question. So yes, it is required for students who are enrolled here to have some form of health insurance. So that's why it's actually on by default, the student health insurance plan that is offered and gets charged. And then for those who have their own private insurance, they're able to opt out, but it is required in order for a student to attend. All right, another question from Facebook here. Due to COVID, one parent is not working and receiving unemployment. What is the process to reassess financial aid? Jess?
Yeah, so that's a great question and a common question that we're getting right now. We do have a process for, again, reviewing changes, potential changes in FAFSA information. So if there has been a change in an employment status for a parent that's been listed on the FAFSA, that could potentially affect a student's aid eligibility. So the first step you're going to want to do is reach out to our office. So either give us a call, leave us a message so that one of our financial aid advisors can call you back, or you can also sign up for our orientation Zoom advising. You're just going to want to discuss the specific situation with the financial aid advisor. We'll actually be able to pull up the student's specific FAFSA information, and we'll be able to sort of estimate to see, okay, will this change in income affect that expected family contribution number, and in turn potentially affect a student's aid eligibility. So first step is reach out to us so that you can talk specifically to a financial aid advisor. Okay, so looks like we have another Facebook comment here. Can I use my financial aid to pay for books?
Excellent question. Okay, so that is actually why we on the letters that the financial aid letter that you would have received include those indirect costs. It's not just for you to sort of think about or plan. Basically, we include that so that students and families can select or apply for additional aid beyond those direct expenses. So those direct costs that we added together in the estimated expenses worksheet, if you have a financial aid that goes beyond those direct costs, whether it be through your gift aid and your federal direct loans, or if you apply, in some cases, students will apply for an alternative loan and they'll request an amount beyond that, those direct costs in order to receive a refund. Now there is a limit to that, which is actually your direct cost plus the indirect costs that we've listed. So those two combined are what we call the cost of attendance, which is actually the limit, sort of a cap, that students are allowed to have financial aid up to that amount. Those indirect costs, you're generally looking at about $3,200 for the year, so about $1,600 per semester. So if you basically, the sort of end result is if you are securing a loan or additional aid or scholarships or whatever the case may be beyond your direct costs, and you end up getting a refund as a result of that, then if you're set up for direct deposit, you'll get it directly into your bank account. Otherwise, you'll get a check. But you'll be able to use those funds for your textbooks. Now, one thing I do want to note about that, though, is you may want to think about the timing. In some cases, if a student is applying for a loan really close to the start of classes, you may not get your refund until that is processed, and you may want to think about if it's possible to buy those textbooks ahead of time and reimburse yourself with that refund that you're sort of securing by trying to get aid beyond those direct costs. So it's certainly something to think about. But yes, you certainly can. Okay, and another question here. If I can't pay the whole bill, will I be able to start classes?
That is a great question, Simon. The answer, the quick answer is yes. However, there are some things to keep in mind with that. So as we mentioned, fall bills are due September 15th. So if your bill is not paid, or if you haven't made arrangements to have that paid, either by applying for an additional loan or by enrolling in an installment payment plan, then you will there's a good chance you'll receive some late fees. So again, that'll just increase the total amount that you owe. The other, and I would say a little bit more of a major reason to make sure that your bill is paid, is that if there's an outstanding bill once you are getting ready to start enrolling in spring semester courses, you could get a hold on your account that prevents you from enrolling in courses for the future. So you would be able to continue and complete your fall classes, however, you would not be able to enroll for the spring. So what I will say on that piece of it is if you are at this point concerned that you won't be able to pay your whole fall bill, definitely reach out to us or schedule one of those orientation Zoom advising sessions. Again, one of the things that we go through is we'll go through your individual education, estimating your expenses, and really go through those different options that might be available to you to help you figure out a plan so that you're not coming here in the fall, with I don't know how I'm going to have my bill paid. Because the biggest piece of advice that I can say, especially for incoming students, is how important it is to have a plan and be thinking about these things before you actually get to campus. Okay, looks like we have another question here. Are there more scholarships to help me pay my bill?
Excellent. Okay. Well, what I generally tell folks, and I strongly encourage a lot of students and families to think about other scholarships and applying for them, because it's something that I, as an undergraduate, didn't take enough advantage of, and certainly regret that. So be proactive about your scholarship search. There are national databases as well as state and regional databases available online that house a lot of different scholarship funds. And I would, my recommendation is don't be afraid of applying for a national scholarship. Be proactive, apply for as many as you possibly can. Take a look at the criteria. If there are scholarships that have more specific criteria and you meet that, then you're actually applying against potentially a smaller applicant pool. So that'll raise your chances as opposed to just wide open scholarships with vague criteria. Though, again, if you have the time, apply for those too. So it's really about taking as many, taking all the chances, the opportunities, the scholarships that are out there, applying for as many as you can. Inquire with your guidance counselor. Quite often there are scholarships offered through your high school or through local organizations. They offer scholarships as well. So it's really about expanding your search. Take a look online, take a look at some of those databases, and apply for them, and see how many you can secure. Wonderful question. All right, next question here. Can my work study be applied directly to my bill?
Another common question that we receive. So as we explained, that federal work study, if you were eligible for it and you were awarded it in your financial aid award package, that work study amount is an amount that you are able to earn in wages throughout the year. And so that amount does not get applied directly to your bill. That is, again, an amount that you're actually earning, and you'll be receiving a biweekly paycheck. So you'll be working, inputting hours, and you can earn up to that amount in work study specific wages. So again, that's another important note, is when you are doing this estimating your expenses piece, is you do not want to include that work study amount as a direct type of financial aid that is going to help reduce those direct costs. Now, certainly what I have seen families and students do is, let's say that you're working and earning some of your work study during the fall semester, you're saving up those funds, that you're earning, and you use those to help pay for your books and supplies for the spring, or other indirect expenses that you may have throughout the year. So I like to sort of categorize, not only just the direct and indirect types of costs, but the indirect and direct types of financial aid. And work study is one of those indirect types of financial aid where it does not get applied directly to the bill.
And if I may, before we move on to the next question here, just a plug again for student employment. So for those of you who may be interested in looking for a job, whether it be a work study job or non-work study job, get in touch with the Office of Student Employment. They have a lot of resources to help guide you on your search for a position, whether it be on or off campus, including CareerLink, which is a search database that houses all of the different positions that are available. So they can help you navigate that entire process and sort of talk to you about some of the options that there are. So if that's something you're interested in, absolutely reach out to that office, and they'd be more than happy to help you with that.
Awesome. So it looks like we have another question here. Can someone else make payments to my account?
Excellent. Okay. Yes. Certainly, if parents, family, if you have others that in your life that want to help pay your educational expenses, absolutely. One thing that I will mention with that is if it's going to go beyond the actual just making the payment, and if you have, let's say, a family member or a parent who wants to inquire about the specifics of your account in addition to making payments, they will need permissions on your account. So for incoming students, for example, if a family member is contacting our office or the bursar's office right now, they are able to speak with us. But starting August 15th, when an incoming student becomes is considered a fully active student, unless that student has provided specific consent through a form that's available on the Office of Student Records website. It's labeled as student consent to release information, so you can certainly go on their website, again, student records, and there's a forms section where you'll be able to download it. They also have an electronic PDF form available, but you need to fill that out and sort of submit that in order to provide specific consent for us to be able to communicate with family members or parents or whoever that may be. So I did want to mention that because that is certainly something you'll want to be aware of if parents or family members are going to be communicating with us.
And there's one more aspect of that piece that I do just want to mention, Simon. It's the in relation to paying specifically for the bill and viewing the bill. There is also a separate feature. It's called Authorize a User. And I am just going to plug some more future episodes where we have actually 2 episodes at the beginning of July that are completely dedicated to the bill and different functions that a student and family may need to complete to just make sure everything is all set with the bill. And this Authorize a User piece is one of those items. And so let's say students, you have a parent who would like to be monitoring that bill, that account activity, and you want to give them access to that and access to make payments. You can actually authorize a specific person as a user. Now again, this only gives them access to just that specific account activity and to be able to make payments. It doesn't give them, it doesn't provide the type of consent that Simon just mentioned. So let's say if the parent calls us or calls the bursar's office, we would still need that student consent to release information form on file in order to release any specific information. But in terms of electronically managing your account and making payments, that's definitely an option and one that we will be talking about in some future episodes. Okay, so it looks like, Simon, I think we are just about done with our second episode. What do you think?
I think we are, and certainly if any of you have any additional questions, feel free to send them to our email, and if we didn't have enough time to answer your question, or you think of some after we're done here today, feel free to send them to our email address, and we'll see if we can include them at the beginning of next Friday's episode. So definitely keep that in mind and reach out to us.
And I do want to put in a plug for another orientation service that we are providing to our students. It's Orientation Zoom Advising for our incoming students, both incoming first years and incoming transfers. If you go to our website, that umaine.edu/StuAid, and then click on Accepted Students, you can actually book a specific appointment, again, to go over a lot of this information and just sort of figure out your plan for the fall to make sure you're as prepared as possible. So we are doing that throughout June and July. In addition, we have Orientation Zoom Advising drop-in hours. So let's say you don't want to book a specific appointment, but you have a question. We've got some specific dates and times when you can just drop on in, and we have an on-call advisor that can help you out. So with that, we will leave you with our contact information. Please feel free to contact us with any questions that you have. And until then, we will see you next week for Financial Aid Fridays.